The Cry of the Ashen Glade. The Ashen Glade was a wasteland of blackened trees and smoldering earth, a scar upon Albion left by the ash drake, a dragon whose breath burned hotter than the fiercest forge. Long since slain, its fiery curse lingered, choking the glade with an unnatural heat. Travelers spoke of hearing voices in the smoke, cries of those who had fallen to the dragon's wrath. Few dared enter, for the cries were said to echo your deepest regrets, dragging you into despair. Eadric of Blackmere approached the edge of the glade at dusk. The sky above was blood red, the air thick with ash. He had been drawn here by rumors of survivors, a small village on the far side of the glade struggling to reclaim their lives. Their crops wilted, their water poisoned, and they had called for aid. Eadric had answered, though he knew the journey would demand more of him than strength alone. As Eadric stepped into the glade, the heat enveloped him like a suffocating shroud. The ground beneath his boots crumbled into ash, and the trees stood like twisted skeletons. The voices began almost immediately, a faint whisper on the edge of hearing. "Eadric," they called, soft but insistent. "You failed us." He clenched his jaw, refusing to let the voices take hold. He had faced these whispers before, remnants of the lives he could not save. He gripped vigilance, his sword, its familiar weight grounding him as he pressed on. The whispers grew louder, taking on familiar tones. He heard Isella's voice, Kyle's, even his own, twisted and accusing. "You let us burn," they cried. "You abandoned us." Eadric's pace slowed, the weight of the voices pressing on his chest. The smoke thickened, swirling around him like grasping hands. He stopped, his breath shallow, his gaze scanning the shifting shadows. "Show yourselves," he said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. The smoke coalesced before him, forming figures, ghostly and translucent, their faces contorted with pain. He recognized them all, villagers, warriors, friends lost to dragonfire. At their center stood a child, her small form clutching a scorched doll. "Why didn't you save us?" the child asked, her voice cutting through the other cries like a blade. "You were supposed to protect us." Eadric dropped to one knee, his sword tip resting on the ground. "I tried," he said, his voice thick with sorrow. "I tried, but I wasn't enough." The child stepped closer, her form flickering. "You left us to burn." Tears stung Eadric's eyes. He had no answer, no excuse. He had spent years carrying the weight of his failures, but here, in the heart of the Ashen Glade, it felt unbearable. "Do you think your guilt will bring us peace?" the child asked. "Do you think carrying it alone will make you stronger?" Eadric looked up, his breath catching. The child's face had softened, her expression no longer one of accusation, but of understanding. The figures in the smoke began to circle him, their voices blending into a mournful hymn. The heat intensified, the ash swirling in a violent storm. Eadric gripped vigilance, using it to push himself to his feet. "You cannot change the past," the child said, her voice rising above the storm. "But you can face it." Eadric closed his eyes, letting the memories come. He saw the village consumed by dragon fire, the screams of those he could not save. He saw himself, younger and filled with despair, fleeing the inferno with a handful of survivors. "I see you," he said, his voice steady. "I hear you, and I will carry you, not as a burden, but as a purpose." The storm paused, the smoke freezing in place. The child's form began to dissolve, her voice softening. "Then you are ready." The ash around Eadric began to glow, faint embers flickering to life. The figures in the smoke faded, their cries replaced by a deep silence. In the center of the glade, where the ash drake had once nested, a single flame burned, a small golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Eadric approached the flame, its warmth far gentler than the oppressive heat of the glade. He knelt before it, his hand hovering over the light. The flame flared briefly, and as it dimmed, he felt its warmth settle in his chest. The smoke began to lift, the glade brightening as the sky turned from red to gold. The blackened trees stood straighter, their bark glimmering faintly as though touched by life. The ground beneath his feet solidified, and the air became breathable once more. As Eadric emerged from the glade, he saw the village in the distance, a cluster of homes surrounded by struggling crops. The villagers stood waiting, their faces etched with worry. When they saw him, their expressions shifted to awe. "You've done it," an elder said, stepping forward. "The curse is lifted." Eadric nodded. "The land will heal, but it will take time. You must tend to it, as you would to one another." The elder's eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Slayer, for giving us hope." Eadric turned to leave, his steps lighter despite the weight he still carried. The flame in his chest pulsed faintly, a reminder of the trial he had faced and the purpose he had reclaimed. The Ashen Glade stood quiet, its fires extinguished, but deep within its heart, the golden flame remained, a beacon of resilience and forgiveness for those brave enough to face it. And as Eadric walked on, his path illuminated by the light within him, the cries of the past faded, replaced by a steady, enduring song of hope.